Okay, welcome back. It's a nice day today finally. Spring is in the air. So we've got everything welded. It all looks really good. So now it's time for bodywork, the best part of the whole project in my opinion. Now, first thing you gotta do is you've gotta rough this up really well. And to do that, we're gonna use a 24 grit. And what I do is I've got a pad like this. I don't have a back or anything like that, but I have just an old zip disc. Put that on there, tighten that onto your grinder, and then you've got all this extra room here. So when this wears out, this edge, all you do is you just cut the edge with tin snips, and then you've got a nice fresh edge, and away you go. Just keep going. So when we have our weld here, we'll probably grind maybe 3 inches above the weld. That should probably be enough. You can always grind a little bit more if you have to. Use the opportunity to make sure that everything's nice and straight. If you have to do a little pounding one way or the other, the more prep that you can do, the better off you are. Now, once we're done that, we're going to take a die grinder. Now, anywhere where you can't get with the pad, we just use the die grinder and you just clean it all up. Because if you leave a little residue, that's just a spot where body fill isn't going to stick really well, and down the road it's just going to bubble off on you. So just clean up everything, inspect it, make sure you haven't got any pinholes, and then we'll move on to the next stage with the body fill. So we will do this with the grinder. I'll show you that, but make sure this is an old paint. It's going to have lead in it. Don't want to lose your edge, so make sure you're wearing a dust mask. So let's get grinding. So the process here, if you go back, I've actually got other videos on maybe a little bit more detail on how I do the body work. I did some box sides for a 67 Chevy, and there might be some other tips in there that maybe I don't cover here, but can't remember. It's a long time ago. First of all, I'm kind of an old school guy. Basically, we're going to put a coat of filler on. And like I said before, these fillers today are so much better than they used to be. The adhesion, everything about them is just better, and I quite like them. So, but I still file them. I still take my little half-round cheese grater, and I will still file the filler once it's set. Not too much. There's a sweet spot. You feel it. It's a little sticky, and you'll learn that. You'll figure that one out for yourself. So first step is we'll mix up the filler to the recommended dosages. You add your hardener to it, mix it very, very well. Put it on there, let her set up. We're going to file it and then let it set just a little bit more, and then we are going to sand it with 40 grit. A lot of guys will just put their filler on and let it sit there, harden up, then sand it. It's a little tougher doing it that way. I actually find that I'm faster if I just do it my way, and I find it straighter too. You're going to be happier with the results. So we're going to go with 40 grit on top, and then what we're going to do is put a bit of a putty on top of that yet, and then that'll be sanded with 80 grit, and then scuffed a little bit with some 220. But you'll see the process as we're moving along. So first thing we'll do is we'll mix up some filler, get her on there. I think this is good enough. We'll probably be able to do it in just one coat. Okay, we got her all filed up. Looks really good. Looks like we're going to be able to nail it in one coat. Now, I know that in the beginning we said we're just going to, we want this to look nice and original. Now, way back in the day, it still looked good. Okay, so when you're doing your sanding, you don't really want to blow into it really hard. Take a nice, medium pressure, and then you kind of want to do it in kind of a crisscross little stroke. And then what you do is you wait, and you look for little indicators. Like, I'm just starting to come through right here. I don't want to go any more than that, but I know that the rest of it looks pretty good. If it was a high spot, I'd have to knock it down with a hammer. So you keep sanding until you hit, like on the side here. Those are little indicator spots that say, you know what, you're good. Don't do any more. Alright, we got her down with the 40 grit, and you can see that we've come through. Everything's nice and feathered out. Looks really, really good. Now, if we were to sand this any further, let's say we wanted to go to 80 grit and all that stuff, now we're actually going lower and making our bodywork actually, worse. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put a thin coat of 2-part putty on top of this, but we're going to feather this out first, probably with some 220. Feather these edges. I don't want to go up too high. Normally, if we were doing a real nice restoration job, we'd take this up here and do the whole thing in bodywork, but we want to retain some of the original color, so we're just going to do the minimal amount, but we're going to do a good job, because when I come off the factory line, it was good. So don't do a crappy job and say, oh, that's the way it was. So we'll feather this out, and then we'll put a 2-part putty on. for some putty. Now, on here, we've got it feathered up to here. Make sure you bring your putty at least, an inch past where your bodywork is. And then you can just bring it in. Look at that, 2 goobers right off the bat. Just scoop them off, throw them on the side of your board. Fun things. What you want to do, another goober, I don't know where those are coming from. Make sure you go over your putty a couple times. What that'll do is eliminate some of the pinholes. The pinholes are a real pain. But you're going to get them, so we'll show you how to deal with that later. Now I only went down to this part down here. Didn't go all the way because that's just the panel part, so there's really no body work to be done down there. You want to go fairly thin with this stuff. Keep it as even as you can. Now if you've got a smaller panel, let's say that we were only doing a little tiny bit, and you're pretty confident that you've got your body filler good, you can go right to 80 grit and avoid this step. But this step is really good if you really want to have some nice straight body work. I'm going to put some putty over here. I'm working over here too. It's pretty boring, trying to keep the ratings up, so I was just going to show you this part. And remember, just to clean this up, we're just using some lacquer thinner. Don't do this, because whatever's on the rag goes in here. Just pour a little bit onto a rag. Make sure you keep everything clean. Alright, my brother was just in, he's just making me laugh. So the process is the same here for this side, for the bodywork. We'll go through it real quick. I'm going to throw a little segment of me just in there with the die grinder. But with the die grinder, make sure you're wearing some really good goggles, unless you want to lay on the couch a day after they dig a piece of steel out of your eyes, because the little shards coming off of that are not good at all. Okay. Let's do the body work. I got a bad angle here, but shop's a little small for doing some really good camera work. That's okay. You'll get the idea. Okay, what we're doing here is we've got our 2-part putty on, thin coat over our filler, and the best way to do this is put a little bit of a guide coat on there. Anytime you can take a little trick like this to help you, guide you where you're sanding, it just makes it so much easier. And you know, I'm really trying to keep this down to grade 6, so the easier I can make it for you, the better your results are going to be. So now that we've got this all coated, then it's just a matter of 80 grit. And you just take your time. And you can see where all your low spots are, or spots that need to be sanded, I guess. They're not low spots. And once again, we're going to keep sanding until we hit our indicator spots. See here, we're coming through, just touching. You can see here, we're still needing a little bit. And we'll just keep going. A little bit more up here yet. I gotta be careful up here, but I gotta change positions, so I don't really want to scratch any of my nice yellow up here. So when we get this all done, next thing we're going to do is we're going to coat it again, and then we're going to give it a nice light sand with 220 or 150, whatever you have, and that'll just get rid of any of the, you know, the deep 80 grit scratches. That's all we want to do with that. Now if we were going to do this, prime this twice, if we're going to prime this twice, then you can leave it at 80 grit. We'll prime it, block it at 150, put another coat of primer on, or another double coat, and then block it out with 320 and then go to paint. But we're not doing that. We want to do this all in one shot. So I'm going to just give it a little light sand, double coat of primer, and then we'll be able to block it out and go right to paint. That's the plan. Okay, we've got this lightly sanded with 220. Now, really lightly sanded. We don't want to, I've still got some 80 grit scratches in here, which is okay because the primer is going to look after that. But if I kept going, then you're just going to have crooked bodywork, and you don't want to do that. So now that we've got that done, this is time we'll take a rat tail and we'll clean up all the holes really well. On your edges, just cut them with the 220. Make sure they're nice and straight. And this is the time when, you know, if you got a chip here or something, you know, you just have to add a little bit more putty and clean it up. I wouldn't, if you were doing a little tiny repair, I'd probably block sand that with a 150. I wouldn't use the 80 grit again. From this point on, you want to make sure you're a little higher grits. Now, we are ready for primer, and that's going to be the next stage. Now, one little tip here, when you're sanding by hand, take just a half a sheet of sandpaper, just fold it into thirds. That way, you got a little bit of backing, and don't ever go straight like this, because then you'll get 3 lines, 3 fingers. Just go on a little bit of an angle, get a little crisscross. Okay, I'll finish up down over here, all the other corners, and we're ready for primer. Okay, just about to apply the 2-part putty. So, if you didn't happen to get this in the first coat, that's not a big deal. You can always add more, but if you got a low spot here, and maybe a little low spot over here, don't just put a little patch here, a little patch here. You want to do the whole area. That way you're not going to end up getting little hilly bodywork. Same thing applies with this stuff. If you have to add a little bit more, not a big deal. Just add just a little bit more. Sometimes you can't get her all in one shot. Alright, I just want to kind of show you what I do here. Now, if you remember, this is the donor panel, and basically I just plug welded this all the way down. So what I usually do in a situation like that is I'll just grind them flat, take the die grinder, clean them all up, and then I'll just run a little bead of filler on here, let that dry, and then I'll just go with 80 grit and then clean it up with a little 150 or 220 or something like that. Just take the high spots off and then go straight to primer. I'm not going to take the time and go to the 2-part putty because we're not really looking to get it perfectly straight or anything like that. Now if there is a problem, then you can put a little 2-part putty on there and fix it up. But with that, we've got a little bit of work down here. Sand this out, and it's time for the cab corners. We got the putty all sanded up nice. I'm just gonna scuff it up with a little 220 just to get that roughness off of there. But just want to draw your attention to these holes here. That's for the inside vent. So they're kind of dished out, and where you've done your body work, you know, you see that it's all kind of filled in. So what I do with that is I will take my die grinder. It's got a little bit of a, just kind of a pointy tip on it, and I'll go really slow and I'm going to clean that all out. I'll zoom in and we'll do that. Once it's cleaned out, then you can take a piece of sandpaper, just kind of do this. I've done these ones here already. Clean it up a little bit, round the edges up, and you're good to go. So we're almost ready for primer on this side. We've got to do some a little bit of clean up and some sanding up here, and we're ready for primer. But I will show you how to do these. Well, our body work is finally done on the cab corners. Next step, of course, is primer, but before we do that, I'm going to prep the rest of the cab so we can prime it all at once. So we'll see you on the next episode.